10. CARLTON FUNDERBURKE. A senior pastor of the Church at the Well in Kansas City, Missouri, came under fire in 2022 when footage of him berating his congregation for not buying him a luxury watch went viral on TikTok. In the controversial clip, the church's founder CARLTON FUNDERBURKE laid into the crowd during a sermon, calling them poor, broke, busted, and disgusted for not forking over bigger donations. In a tone that can only be described as dripping with entitlement, the preacher asked, "I'm not worth your McDonald's money? I'm not worth your Red Lobster money?" He then went on to ask worshippers if he wasn't worth the money they spend on designer labels. Funderburke mentioned how he had asked the congregation to buy him a Movado watch from Sam's Club the year before but never got one. The watches typically sell for anywhere from $300 to $3,000, according to the New York Post. He described the churchgoers as his cheap sons and daughters and continued to talk down to them. He later justified his berating remarks by arguing that he wanted everyone to understand just what God is saying. Shockingly, some of the worshippers cheered the man on as he insulted the members of the church. However, the online community was quick to voice its disapproval of the pastor, who many accused of being a false prophet who's out for material gain. One commenter conveyed the obnoxiousness of Funderburke's behavior by asking which part of the gospel mentions Movado watches. Shortly after the clip went viral, Funderburke posted an apology video to the church's YouTube channel. In it, he claimed that there was context behind the content of the clip, but that no context would suffice to explain the hurt and anguish his words had caused. He continued by saying that the video does not reflect his heart or his sentiment towards God's people. Funderburke specifically addressed those who'd never heard of him until they saw the viral clip, stating that he regretted giving himself such a negative first impression of himself. The disgraced pastor said he had privately made amends with the congregation and that they remained loving and supportive towards him. He also apologized to preachers and pastors who were personally affected by the controversy. Many continue to question Funderburke's sincerity and motives, believing that he was only sorry because he got caught. 9. Tianish Jones. Nobody likes being stuck in a fast food drive-thru, but the wait became so unbearable one evening for a pregnant Florida woman in 2022 that she took matters into her own hands. Tianish Jones was at McDonald's in Lakeland, becoming increasingly more frustrated as the minutes passed by when she decided that she couldn't wait any longer for her food. Jones stormed into the restaurant, walked behind the counter, and started throwing cups and bottles. In total, she caused around $100 in damages. Jones then dialed 911 and complained about the service and her order. Workers repeatedly told her to leave, but she refused to listen as she carried on with her hangry meltdown. A family member tried getting the woman to exit the restaurant, but before she walked out the door, she reportedly lifted her shirt and twerked at the employees. Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd said that he didn't know why she was so angry, but that her actions were outrageous, especially for a place where small children often visit. He described 22-year-old Jones as a few fries short of a Happy Meal. She was later charged with burglary, assault, criminal mischief, disorderly conduct, and misuse of 911. Her lawyer criticized the sheriff's Happy Meal comment as unprofessional and argued that his client was off her medication for bipolar disorder due to her pregnancy. 8. Ellie Silva. A convenience store worker in Las Cruces, New Mexico was pricing a shipment of liquor bottles in 2022 when a man stormed into the business and ordered him to call the owner. He then started to grab liquor bottles out of the box and threw them at the employee, striking her 3 times. The terrified clerk fled the store as the man destroyed everything in sight, knocking products onto the floor, toppling shelves, and allegedly punching a computer. A few minutes later, he exited the store and approached a customer's vehicle. He then opened the passenger side door and grabbed the man's small dog before throwing the animal across the parking lot. He continued his rampage by throwing the innocent customer to the ground. The crazed vandal started beating and kicking the victim, drawing the attention of bystanders who rushed over to stop the attack. Deputies arrived at the scene a few minutes later and charged 43-year-old Ellie Garcia Silva with battery, felony property damage, and animal cruelty. Records later revealed that this wasn't the first time he was accused of a violent public outburst. In 2020, Silva was also arrested at a Walmart for allegedly refusing to cooperate with police and spitting in an officer's face. Surprisingly, the case was eventually dropped due to a lack of evidence. 7. Anna Lushchinskaya. A young Asian American woman was minding her own business on the New York City subway in December 2018 when she became the target of a hate-filled racist rant after simply bumping into a fellow passenger. People accidentally brush against each other all the time in the Big Apple's densely packed transit system. However, 40-year-old Anna Lushchinskaya was unwilling to let the incident go. She immediately erupted into a tirade, hurling racial slurs and screaming at the victim while beating her with an umbrella and a set of keys. Some bystanders recorded the alarming tantrum, while others tried to restrain Lushchinskaya. A man named Juan Ayala stepped in front of her to protect the victim and was also attacked and targeted with derogatory insults. Just months earlier, Lushchinskaya had been arrested for pepper spraying a man in another unprovoked subway attack. She claimed that her alleged victims had attacked her first and that the footage circulating online failed to show what led up to her behavior. Nobody seemed to agree with the woman, including witnesses who were present during the altercations. Lushchinskaya originally faced a felony charge for her anti-Asian ambush, but pleaded guilty to the much lighter charge of second-degree menacing. The judge overseeing the case sentenced her to 2 years of probation and ordered her to attend just 1 day of anger management, which many viewed as a slap on the wrist. 6. Delvonte King. A 9-year-old girl in Louisville, Kentucky endured months of bullying in 2022 before her father ultimately decided to take the matter into his own hands. Delvonte King had asked his young daughter's school to take action when she repeatedly came home and complained about other kids teasing, attacking, and throwing things at her on the bus. Staff members reassured him that they would address the issue, but the bullying continued. King claimed that he tried to work things out with the bully's parents, but that also failed to resolve the problem. When the little girl came home with a bump on her head, King felt he could no longer simply stand by and hope that the school's employees would look out for her safety. When the bus arrived for his daughter the next day, he entered the vehicle and delivered a strongly worded warning to the kids, threatening to flip the bus over if any of them ever touched the girl again. The profanity-laced tirade was captured on video and quickly went viral, and the school sent a note home to parents about the incident. In the letter, King was accused of getting into a car and flashing a gun while he followed the bus. He later admitted to boarding the school bus and apologized for his behavior, but adamantly denied following the vehicle and said that he'd never wave a gun at children. Speaking with Wave News, King accused the school of trying to tear down his character and make him look like a monster. However, it seems like he knows that his anger got the best of him. He said that he's just a father trying to protect his children in a situation where those who had the authority to handle it failed to do so. 5. Grumpy Granny Grounds Flight. In an era where stories about unruly passengers wreaking havoc on airplanes has become the norm, the shock value of these headlines has started to wear off. However, one elderly woman's behavior was so outrageous that she earned herself a spot on today's list. The senior citizen was on a flight from Manchester, England to Rhodes, Greece in 2022 when she became angry with the crew for denying her free champagne. She ordered a gin and tonic instead, but she continued acting belligerent. Due to her behavior, an employee on the flight took the drink away. The woman then retaliated and slapped the steward before throwing punches at anyone that got near her. An unnamed witness later told the press that she urinated on several seats during the tantrum and tried to open the emergency exit mid-flight. She became so out of control, the pilots had no choice but to divert the flight to Munich. The woman reportedly continued to have violent outbursts until the plane landed. 9 police officers escorted the aggressive passenger off the flight, and the aircraft continued on to Rhodes 2 hours later. Passengers praised the flight crew for their handling of the situation, and in an ironic twist, everyone received a free drink for their inconvenience. 4. Amy Carter. In a bizarre display of public nudity turned violent, a completely naked woman walked into an Orlando intersection and blocked traffic one night in 2015. She apparently stood in front of a couple's car and touched herself inappropriately before jumping on the hood and stomping on it, causing multiple dents. During the strange performance, she also threw a cell phone at the car behind the one she was standing on. Police identified the woman as 31-year-old Amy Carter and said that she appeared to be under the influence of a heavy unknown substance. She refused to get out of the street, and when officers tried to remove her, she allegedly began kicking and flailing. They eventually got her in handcuffs and took her to a nearby hospital for observation. Carter was subsequently charged with criminal mischief and exposure of sexual organs and was arrested. 3. A beating from BJORK. Icelandic singer BJORK had just endured a long flight to Bangkok in early 1996 when she entered the airport with her 10-year-old son Sindri. Radio reporter Julie Kaufman was awaiting their arrival and allegedly tried to question the boy, sending BJORK into protective mother mode. There are conflicting stories about what exactly was said before the singer attacked Kaufman, but the situation ended with both women on the floor and a security guard peeling BJORK off the journalist. The singer later contacted Kaufman and apologized profusely for the outburst. She explained that she was exhausted when she lashed out and no charges were pursued. However, history repeated itself at the Auckland International Airport in New Zealand 12 years later. Apparently, photographer Glenn Jeffrey had ignored the singer's request not to snap any photos of her partner. BJORK reacted by ripping his shirt in half with such force that she fell to the floor while her partner pleaded with her to stop. Jeffrey made it clear that he didn't touch BJORK during the altercation, but that he had no plans to press charges. The Auckland police also announced that they had no plans to investigate the incident. Hopefully, these encounters serve as cautionary tales for other pushy journalists, and maybe they'll think twice before messing with BJORK when she asks them not to. 2. GAYLYNN ATLENE Bailey. A woman in West St. Paul, Minnesota, became so furious at Target employees in March 2022 that the store ended up being evacuated. GAYLYNN ATLENE Bailey was allegedly upset over a previous purchase when she began trashing everything in sight. The disgruntled customer knocked over televisions, smashed display cases with a golf club, and dumped laundry detergent among other liquids onto the floor. When officers arrived at the scene, they told her to get on the ground, but she reportedly ignored their commands. Instead, according to a police complaint, Bailey continued to knock items off of shelves. She carried on with the destruction even as the police escorted her out of the store, kicking display stands and merchandise along the way. The damages were originally estimated at around $7,000. However, that amount was expected to rise as staff members assessed the destroyed property in detail and cleaned the mess. This required store associates to close the store during normal business hours. Bailey was ultimately charged with felony first-degree criminal damage to property, and if convicted, she could face up to 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. 1. Colin Reimer. Employees at a restaurant in North Tyneside, England, were brutally abused one day in 2021 when a customer walked in with a bottle of vodka in his hand and immediately became aggressive toward them. The young man, later identified as 24-year-old Colin Reimer, allegedly threatened to burn the business down and hurled racial slurs at the staff members. The employees responded to the unprovoked barrage by telling him that they were calling the police. The outburst continued as Reimer pulled a sign to the floor, threatened to hit and slash workers with his vodka bottle, and tried to get behind the counter. However, restaurant staff were able to restrain him until the police arrived. During the arrest, he continued to spew violent and racist insults. Reimer was convicted of racially aggravated criminal damage and a racially aggravated public order offense. At his sentencing, he complained that he didn't feel well, and the hearing was adjourned. Although he'll eventually have to face the consequences of his actions, and the clock is ticking. Thanks for watching. Would you rather deal with the embarrassment of being seen trying to calm down your drunk friend, or have your flight diverted due to an unruly passenger? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe.